Shalom, welcome to YPS. Thanks for joining us. We're going to continue dealing with the Messianic prophecies. Today, we're going to deal with Genesis 49 and 10. I know a lot of people have heard this verse quoted over the years. So we're going to jump right into it. Thanks for everybody who showed up. So Genesis 49 and 10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. Now, that's a New King James Version. Some translations say this. In the 21st century KJV, it says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and that to him shall be the gathering of the people. So some say the obedience of the people, some say the gathering of the people. The word for obedience is yikah. So I don't know how that gets translated as gathering from obedience. I guess people obey you when they come around you. I'm not sure how they came up with that translation, but the question is, did the people obey or reject Jesus? Because we know, you ask a Christian, they're gonna say, oh, that's basically a prophecy that's foretelling the future Messiah known as Jesus. So we have to ask the question, did the people obey or reject Jesus? You know, Israel was scattered, so there wasn't a gathering, you know what I mean? Now, people did follow him around according to the Gospels, but that wasn't necessarily because he was the king. It's because they wanted him to do miracles and feed them and stuff like that. So it's really not the same thing. So in Mark 8:31, it says, and he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Luke 17:25, but first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. So if he's rejected, that right there shows he didn't have the obedience of the people. People that obey you don't reject you. They obey you. They listen. They want more. So that doesn't even make any sense according to the Gospels. Mark 14:27. Then Jesus said to them, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. So that's not a gathering of the people. If he himself says his disciples are going to be scattered. So even in the New Testament, it doesn't even line up with what Genesis 49 is really telling us. So that right there should be a red flag that just because a Christian tells you Jesus fulfilled something, go into the text with them, ask questions. So in Luke 21:20-24, does this sound like a king gathering his people, or the people obeying him? Or are we going to see something else in Luke 21:20-24? But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. So he's telling you right here, I'm not going to save you. Your desolation is near. That's the opposite of salvation. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. We know that's a punishment in the Torah. When Israel has to flee, that means because God's not with them. Go back and read Deuteronomy. Let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. That's another red flag. It says, when this happens, when Judea is surrounded by armies, all things which are written may be fulfilled. Well, that didn't happen, right? But woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. That's not salvation. And they will fall by the edge of the sword. That's not salvation. And be led away captive into all nations. That's not salvation. And Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Is that the gathering of the people that was supposed to happen according to a Messianic prophecy? Doesn't sound like it. Matthew 10:23. When they persecute you in this city, flee to another. Again, we know if you got to run away from your enemies in the Tanakh, there's a problem. For assuredly, I say to you, you will not have gone through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. So Jesus was supposed to return before they went around the cities of Israel. Well, we know Israel's not the biggest country in the world. And according to Paul in Colossians 1:23, the gospel was preached to every creature under heaven. So that this right here is a false prophecy. So there's no obedience if people are having to flee to another country because they won't listen, because the disciples are going around preaching. And then if they have to flee because they're being persecuted, they don't have the obedience of the people. The people ain't trying to hear what they got to say. Why would you have to flee? Mark 13:14. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. So again, if the abomination of desolation is set up, when we know in the times of the Romans, they put their eagle in the front of the temple. So if the Romans are still in control, who exactly does Jesus have the obedience of? His disciples? The world? The Romans? No, just his disciples. The Romans could care less about what he had to say. There was no obedience given to Jesus by the Romans. Pilate asked him a couple questions and sent him to be flogged. Herod came, told him to do some miracles. He didn't do it. He didn't talk to Herod. And Herod, it says they mocked him and dressed him up. That's not obedience to the Messiah, right? They made fun of him. John 10:12-15. But a hireling, he who is not the shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf does not care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep and am known by my own. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Well, he's saying here that if you abandon the sheep, you don't care about them. But what did he say? In John 8:21, then Jesus said to them again, I am going away, and you will seek me and will die in your sin. Where I go, you cannot come. But then he just tells you in John 10 that if a shepherd leaves the sheep to the wolves, he don't really care about them. Matthew 24:9. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. You left your flock. I thought they were supposed to be gathered to you and obey you. Why are they killing your disciples? If you're supposed to have the obedience of the people or the gathering of the people, that's not a fulfillment of this prophecy in Genesis 49. Zechariah 11:17. Woe to the worthless shepherd who leaves the flock. A sword shall be against his arm and against his right eye. His arm shall completely wither and his right eye shall be totally blinded. Some translations say, woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. The idle shepherd, worthless shepherd. Either way, it's not a good look. The 21st century KJV says, woe to the sham shepherd that leaveth the flock. So we see Jesus telling his disciples that he's going to leave them, his sheep. And doesn't he say, I send you amongst wolves? I send you amongst the enemies who are going to do this and do that to you? If you had the obedience of the people, nobody would touch them. Right? That would make perfect sense. Nobody would mess with your people if you had control of the situation. 2 Samuel 10:17. Now we're going to shift gears, and I'm going to show you what obedience of the people look like and what gathering of the people look like in the Tanakh. 2 Samuel 10:17. When it was told David, he gathered all Israel, crossed over the Jordan, and came to Helam, and the Syrians set themselves in battle array against David and fought with him. So David had control of the people. He had the obedience of the people. They gathered with David to fight against their enemies. David didn't tell them, flee, run. Your desolation is near, but I'm the savior. First Chronicles 15:3. And David gathered all Israel together at Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the Lord to its place, which he had prepared for it. We see the whole people gathered together at Jerusalem for this event of bringing the ark to it. David had command of his people because he was a true king and Messiah. We don't see this in the New Testament. We see Jesus arguing with everybody through the whole book. He arguing with the Pharisees and whoever want to talk to him. He got a problem with them. Not everybody, but y'all know what I mean. So Genesis 49:10 and Solomon. Here's something interesting. First Chronicles 29-23. Then Solomon sat on the throne of the Lord as king instead of David, his father, and prospered, and all Israel obeyed him. There we go right there. That's Genesis 49:10, verbatim. All Israel obeyed him. He's the king. He's on the throne. That's what this is supposed to look like. So actually, Solomon's reign is pretty much what a Messianic kingdom is going to look like. There's going to be peace on all sides. Of course, this is pre-Solomon's sins, but there's going to be peace. There's going to be a king. The nations are going to come to Jerusalem, like in 1 Kings 4:34, that all the kings came to hear his wisdom. That's just like in Isaiah 2, when all the nations are going to flow to Jerusalem and learn the Torah. So Solomon's king is kind of like the setup of what the Messianic kingdom will look like, basically in those times. So 1 Kings 10:24-26. And all the earth sought to Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver and vessels of gold and garments and armor and spices, horses and mules, a rate year by year. And Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 2,000 horsemen whom he bestowed. I cut off the verse in that real quick. Hold on one second. Something happened. What's that? 1 Kings 10. I want to read that out of context. And Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, whom he stationed in the chariot cities and with the king at Jerusalem. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and he made cedar trees as abundant as the sycamores, which are in the lowland. So basically, it's telling you about Solomon's glory. But he gathered all these things together. He gathered people. People was coming to him to hear his wisdom, which of course he was teaching them Torah. So this is what it looks like when somebody has obedience and a gathering of the people. You don't hear Solomon having to deal with an invading army, telling him what to do, taxing his people, crucifying people. That's not what the Messianic era looks like. The gathering of the people and the obedience of the people are going to be united, right? That when you gather people and they obey you, you're uniting the people. You're not bringing people together so they can fight against each other. Luke 12:51-53. Do you suppose that I came to give peace on earth? I tell you, not at all, but rather division. That's not a gathering of the people. From now on, 5 in one house will be divided, 3 against 2, 2 against 3. Father will be divided against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. How is that the obedience of the people or the gathering of the people if everybody's fighting? Because when the Messiah comes, it's not going to be an argument. His actions are going to show he's a Messiah. He's going to build a temple. There's not going to be any more wars. He's going to be the king. He's going to be in Jerusalem. Like, it's not like you have to believe in the Messiah. When David was the king, you didn't have to believe in David that he was the king. You saw him on the throne. You saw his army. You saw what he was doing. It wasn't something to believe in. It was a fact. Like when there's a president in America, you might not like him, but you know who the president is. The guy that goes on Air Force One every day and in and out the Oval Office. That's the president, whether you like it or not. You don't have to believe that. That's nothing to believe in. When there's a king, you're going to see it. You're not going to have to believe in it and make illusions in your mind if this is the Messiah or not. 1 Corinthians 11:18. For first of all, when you come together as a church, I hear that there are divisions among you, and in part, I believe it. If Jesus had the gathering or the obedience of the people, why does his own church have these divisions Paul is talking about? They ain't even getting along. If they are gathered, they fighting, which means they ain't obeying whatever rules is going down. Somebody's rebelling and somebody got a problem with it, and now we got division. James 1:1. James, a bondservant of God in the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings. So if they're scattered, where is the gathering at? When were they gathered if they're scattered? According to James, the brother of Jesus. This is firsthand information from his brother telling you that they scattered. Ain't nobody gathered. So he wasn't a king. And when we go into the New Testament, we're going to talk about his kingship, which means that he couldn't have been this king that was waited on from Genesis 49, Matthew 2:2, saying, where is he who was born king of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. So the Magi are coming to look for the so-called king, Jesus, right? But what's interesting is in Judea or Judah, Herod's the king. Herod is sitting where he's supposed to be sitting at. So how you could call him a king, but who's really the king? Did you ask anybody around there? They're going to say Herod. John 6:15. Therefore, when Jesus perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he departed again to the mountain by himself alone. He didn't even want this kingship. Some will say, oh, it wasn't his time. If it wasn't his time, then he ain't the Messiah, obviously, right? If you don't want to be on the throne, then you're not the guy who's supposed to fulfill the job description. It's only obvious. Matthew 27:11. Now, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus said to him, it is as you say. So if it is as you say, when they came to make you a king, why did you run? It's a simple question. John 18:36, Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Jews, but now my kingdom is not from here. So the people want to make him king, he runs. Pilate asked him, are you the king of the Jews? It is as you say. Then my kingdom ain't of this world. Like, which one is it, dude? You all over the place. John 18:37. Pilate therefore said to him, are you a king then? Jesus answered, you say rightly that I am a king. You say that I'm a king. If Jesus had the obedience of the people, he wouldn't be talking to Pilate. Pilate would be up out of there. He was called a governor. Well, Judah is also called governors. Read Zechariah. It said the governors of Judah are going to be doing the fighting. Zerubbabel was a governor of Judah, from the tribe of Judah. He wouldn't be arguing with Pilate the Roman about his kingdom if he was truly the one who was to be the king and gather the people. So in Genesis 49:10, if the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. What's going on in the New Testament? How come these things ain't happening? So on a side note, because it says the scepter shall not depart from Judah. Was Jesus a Levite or was he from Judah? Now, Joseph, who was from Judah, and he's not his father, right? That's clear in the New Testament. So his mother Mary having a cousin that is from Levi implies Jesus to be a Levite, maybe, possibly. If his mother is cousins to a Levite, that means something's weird is going on. Who is the Levite that is the cousin to Jesus? And how did they become Levites? And is Mary a Levite who married somebody from Judah? None of this stuff is really clear. But if Joseph is not his father, then he wouldn't be a descendant of David anyway. Then they want to pull, adoption and all kind of weird stuff. So this is what it says, Luke 1:5. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the divisions of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. So if Elizabeth is a cousin to Mary and she's a daughter of Aaron, how exactly are her and Mary related if she's from the tribe of Levi and Mary is from the tribe of Levi, possibly? It doesn't really say. So I'm not going to say it says that, but something to consider. So this would imply that their parents are siblings or some, they got to be related. Now, it's possible siblings could be from different tribes, but we know in the Torah, it says that disrupts the inheritance process. So that raises a whole nother problem. Why are you messing up the inheritance, marrying outside of your tribe? So it's just a little foggy right there. Consider that he got to be from Judah, right? So just some background on that, Numbers 36:6. This is what the Lord commands concerning the daughters of Zelophehad, saying, let them marry whom they think best, but they may marry only within the family of their father's tribe. Numbers 36:8. And every daughter who possesses an inheritance in any tribe of the children of Israel should be the wife of one of the family member of her father's tribe, so that the children of Israel each may possess the inheritance of his fathers. So by marrying outside your tribe, you mess up the inheritance. So if Mary and Elizabeth are cousins and Elizabeth's from the daughters of Aaron, somebody else is from the daughters of Aaron. So I'm going to just leave that out there and let y'all think about that. So it says that Matthew was righteous in the New Testament, right? Matthew 1:19. Then Joseph, her husband, being a just man, and now wanted to make her a public example, was minded to put her away secretly. Why? Because he knew the baby wasn't his, so he ain't the father. Now, what he could have done to clear all this up is taking her to the priest in Numbers chapter 5. It's a whole chapter dedicated to, if you think your wife's cheating, take her to the priest, and he can basically tell if she's cheating or not. And if she's good, she's going to have a baby. If not, she's going to be cursed. This would have cleared up the whole situation of the virgin birth, but it ain't even brought up. A lot of people don't even know that this is in the Torah. Read Numbers chapter 5. Here's a snippet. Numbers 5:28 says, but if the woman has not defiled herself and is clean, then she shall be free and may conceive children. She could have been exonerated by the priest. We see there was a priest. It says Zacharias was righteous. He could have clearly just taken her to him and everything would have been cleared up. Now, I know it says Zacharias couldn't speak and stuff, but he could have told somebody else, hey, man, do the ritual, right? Make sure that they're kosher, right? So it says in Luke 1:5-6, there was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the divisions of Abijah. His wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of the Lord blameless. I know Paul ain't gonna like that verse, but that's what it say, that they was righteous and blameless, keeping the commandments. Galatians 2:21, side note. Y'all read that. So going back to the king. So according to the New Testament, I mean, we know it's all over the place, but is David the father of God? Because for the Trinitarian Christians, this is kind of a question for them. Luke 1:32, he will be great and he will be called the Son of the Highest, and the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. So David is the father of God? If Jesus is God? That's just my question, right? And if the scepter will not depart from Judah, God is from the tribe of Judah? Because I didn't read that in the Tanakh. It says, from your seed, David, from your loins. So how exactly did God get to the tribe of Judah to be on the throne of his father, who is David? I mean, these sound like jokes, but they're real questions to the Trinitarians. I know all the Christians don't believe that, right? But then we got another problem, that Jesus doesn't even really claim to be a son of David, because here's the problem. Matthew 22:42-45. So this will mess up the whole thing about the scepter should not depart from Judah if Jesus is saying that he ain't a son of David. Matthew 22:42-45, saying, what do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? They said to him, the son of David. He said to them, how then does David in the spirit call him Lord, saying, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. If David then calls him Lord, how is he his son? Why wouldn't he be a son of David? If Luke says you were supposed to be the son of David, throughout the New Testament, he's supposed to be a son of David. So why is Jesus raising this question? The first problem is Psalm 110, by the way, on a side note, we know this is covered by many different rabbis or whoever, but I also have a video on Psalm 110 and the Kings of Righteousness on NETIV and on my YouTube page, Clouds of Torah. I have a book called Psalm 110 and the Kings of Righteousness on Amazon. You can get that on cloudsoftorah.com or Amazon to go into the details about this, but just showing you, even David is asking him why he's called the son of David. Why would he even raise that question? He should be proud to be a son of David. Like that, it doesn't make any sense, right? So Mark 11:10 says, blessed is the kingdom of our father David that comes in the name of the Lord, Hosanna in the highest. So we see in Mark, Jesus is called the son of David. I mean, blessed is the kingdom of our father David. So if Jesus is God, again, is David his father? Doesn't make any sense, right? Luke 2:4, Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house of in the lineage of David. Doesn't say him and Mary were. That would have been clear to put Mary right there. But it just says Joseph was of the house of David, which would imply Mary wasn't. It didn't, if it would have said they were of the house of David. But it clearly just says Joseph was of the house of David. So what house was Mary from? We can go back to, Elizabeth and might clear that up, but just something to think about. So back to this scepter shall not depart from Judah, and the prophecy to the king of Judah is always in the land of Israel. It's not in this fairy tale land that Jesus is saying his kingdom is not part of this world. Jeremiah 33:15-22. In those days and at that time will I cause the branch of righteousness to grow up unto David, and he shall execute judgment and righteousness in the land. In those days shall Judah be saved, not scattered, not armies coming and kicking them out, not being killed by the sword and all the stuff that he says but what happened to the desolation of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem shall dwell safely. And this is the name wherewith he shall be called the Lord our righteousness. So this is what the people were looking for when the Messiah was going to show up, or supposed to show up in the New Testament according to Christians. They say, oh, the disciples got it wrong. But if they're reading this, they got it right. They was looking for somebody to let them dwell safely, not be killed because of the Messiah, right? That's the opposite. Excuse me. Verse 17, Jeremiah 33:17. For thus said the Lord, David shall never want a man, not God, a man to sit upon the throne of the house of Israel. Neither shall the priests, the Levites. It doesn't say the order of Melchizedek. It says, neither shall the priests, the Levites, want a man before me to offer burnt offerings and to kindle meat offerings and to do sacrifices continually. It could have clearly says, oh, in these days, there's going to be an order of Melchizedek and Jesus is going to be the high, and the Messiah would be that high priest too. No, it clearly says the Levites. And the word of the Lord came unto Jeremiah saying, thus said the Lord, if you can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, that there shall not be day and night in their season, then may also my covenant be broken with David, my servant, that he should not have a son to reign upon his throne. Not me and not God in the flesh, but a son of him to reign upon his throne. Actually be on the throne, not in heaven telling everybody you the king of Israel. And with the Levites, the priests, my ministers. As the hosts of heaven cannot be numbered, neither the sand of the sea measured, so I will multiply the seed of my servant David and the Levites that minister unto me. If Jesus is the new high priest, according to Hebrews, then you broke the covenant of day and night. You basically said God broke his covenant with day and night. Because he says, if you can do that, then none of this is possible. If that covenant get broken, then he's going to break his covenant with David and the Levites. Because remember, he told Levi in Leviticus chapter 18, in Deuteronomy 18, you are the ones that are going to offer me sacrifices. Christians love to go to Deuteronomy 18, but they won't start from verse 1. Read Deuteronomy 18, verse 1 through 20. Don't just jump into, verse 15 to 16, talking about, y'all want a prophet and obey the prophet and all that stuff. No, start at verse 1, and it starts off talking about the Levites and their job description, their duties. So Zechariah 12:7. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the house of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. This is important because the Messiah is going to come from Judah, so he's going to save Judah first to establish the house of David and their authority like it's supposed to be, because the scepter should not depart from Judah, right? So in Zechariah 14, verses 16 through 20, this is after the war, which when you read Zechariah 14, and actually when you read Zechariah 12 and Zechariah 14, the governors, plural, of Judah fight. It doesn't say somebody comes from the clouds and beats up angels and demons, right? It doesn't say that. It says they actually fight in a war. Zechariah 14:16. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations that came against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And it shall be that those who will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain. I'm sorry, lost my place. Even unto them shall be no rain. And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, they will have no rain. This shall be the plague whereof the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, one of the interesting things is we know the feast days are part of the law. So if the law was abolished, why are they coming to keep the Feast of Tabernacles? Y'all might want to ask Paul that, right? This shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And that day there shall be upon the bells of the horses holiness unto the Lord, and the pots in the Lord's house should be like the bowls before the altar. And once again, we see an altar, which would imply sacrifices, and a temple. And we just seen a prophecy that you cannot break the covenant with day and night. And that will put the Levites in position to be doing their job and not somebody named Jesus, who's the new high priest. So Malachi 3:2-6. But who may abide the day of his coming, and who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like a fuller's soap, and he shall sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi. Why would the sons of Levi be purified if they no longer have a job to give sacrifices in the third temple? Right? And purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer to the Lord an offering in righteousness. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant to the Lord, as in the days of old, as in the former years. So we're going back to a sacrificial system. Just like it says, there's going to be a covenant with David and Levi. Those two covenants are going to be in effect. And I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers and against the adulterers, against false swearers, and against those that oppress the hireling in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, and those that turn aside the stranger from his right. And fear not me, said the Lord of hosts, for I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore, you sons of Jacob are not consumed. So why am I reading this verse or this particular chapter? Because the Christians will tell you, this was Jesus. He's the one who came and he purified the sons of Levi with his blood, right? That's always the excuse. He came to the temple, right? They say he came to the temple. He knocked over the money changers and all that stuff. This was him coming to his temple, right? Well, it says in verse 5, I will come near to you to judgment, and I will be a witness against the sorcerers and the adulterers. When did this judgment happen? Because in the New Testament, it even talks about adultery, right? And we see sorcerers in the book of Acts. So when did they get judged if this was already Jesus's job to fulfill this right here? Because when we go to Acts 13:6, it says, and when they had gone through the isle unto Paphos, they found a certain sorcerer, a false prophet, a Jew whose name was Bar Jesus, or son of Jesus. Now, what son of Jesus now? Let's think about this. If Jesus didn't have no kids, there was somebody else named Jesus, which meant if you ask somebody you believe in Jesus, you're going to have to ask which one, right? Acts 13:8. But Elymas, the sorcerer, for so is his name by interpretation, withstood them, seeking to turn away the deputy from his faith. So if there's sorcerers in the New Testament, that means Malachi couldn't have been fulfilled because there's going to be judgment against these sorcerers, right? Doesn't make any sense. So it hasn't happened yet. So trying to place Jesus into that prophecy because he came to the temple and turned over the money changers, but he didn't purify no sons of Levi, because nowhere in the New Testament do we see anything like that. And the high priests of that time were Sadducees. They didn't even believe in the Torah. They don't believe in the resurrection. They didn't believe in angels. It says that in the New Testament. So that wouldn't even make any sense. So to come to a conclusion here, to be obeyed or rejected, right? Which one happened in the New Testament? Excuse me. Genesis 49:10 again. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. Luke 17:25. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected of his generation. So was he supposed to have the obedience of the people or be rejected? If you're rejecting the Messiah, if everybody rejects the Messiah, how's he going to bring world peace and put an end to the wars? Ain't that what he's supposed to do? Beat their swords into plowshares, right? There's supposed to be peace in the world. If people are rejecting him, then you can't do that, right? It doesn't make any sense. So on that note, Genesis 49:10 is not fulfilled in the New Testament.